give a little, I know we voted it last week, but Bob wants to take wants one more stand, especially since he wasn't here last week, on Article 28, so I figured we let him give us a little better explanation, because I think we did have a little confusion among ourselves as to what was the purpose or how it was narrowing the potential use, et cetera. So we'll let Bob jump in, and then after Bob, we'll go through the budget, and then we need to go through a few, the remaining articles. Some I may need you guys to give us a little background on one or two of them, because we haven't discussed them yet. And then we'll assign them out to all the people that aren't here, and we'll be ready to go. All right, Bob, so, Article 28. All right, so just one, sorry. So last night, the selectmen did number all the articles, so the draft you have is the numbered one. I've transferred our votes to each one. I think I'm up to date, so if we get to a spot where we think we've already done one, I'll let you know. Go ahead, Bob. Nope, we're live. Excellent. All right.
So this article,
You wanna move back?
no, really, that's all right. I got my best sign. The article originally, the way it stands right now is that you require a special permit for any ground-mounted solar. Special permit is not something that can be denied, it only can be conditioned. So it's not something that you can say, no, you can't put those panels there. It's only a matter of, the reason we put that in as a special permit is we had a case where the people went and put in ground-mounted solar next to their house, and all the neighbors didn't find out about it until they were actually being put in. And then after, much discussion, I think, with the neighborhood, they decided to take them down. So this was a good way of allowing everybody in the area to know that these panels are going up, number one. But the part that we were missing is that it should have been an accessory to either a residential building or to a commercial building, because otherwise they could take a parcel of land and just put these solar panels. As long as it was a buildable lot, they could put these structures in without any house being there. So if you owned a house and the lot next door, someone decides that they wanted to put in a solar farm, they could actually do it, and they would have to get a special permit, but that special permit only is gonna put conditions on it. And the conditions, can't be to the point where it's too onerous that it won't work, where you can't, shade the thing all the way around so nobody can see it, because it needs the sunlight, and that would be, so what I'm saying is, if you guys are all set with that, then you don't wanna vote for this, that people could do this. If you wanna make it so that they can only do it in where there is a residential house already or a commercial building already, then you would wanna vote for this, that, at least it's not gonna be raw land that they're gonna just take and put these solar farms on.
And so, Bob, if we pass this article, there'd be no ability in a vacant lot to put up these types of structures?
Right. What we've done in the past, like for the, at the landfill, is we've come in for an overlay for a solar farm. Because generally, actually, a guy was in today asking about putting in a solar field on a vacant piece of property in a residential district today. And I said, right now you could do it, but since this has already been advertised, if this passes, then you probably wouldn't be able to do it. So, it's up to you. It's up to you guys whether or not you want to move it forward.
Yeah. And just another clarification, within the, I guess, the confines of this particular section of the zoning bylaws, so if something's not allowed, then by default, if something's not specifically allowed by default, you can't do it. Okay, all right. Okay, so because I think this was the article we added last year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And I'm just trying to define, because right now, it's allowed that in.
Yeah, it's open for either type of parcel, obviously,
Right.
yes. Could there be a case, though, where it would make sense to put a solar field on I can't think of one off the top of my head, but
Industrial land or?
Yes, yeah, I'm just wondering,
Well-
would there be any ability to do that, or no? Or how could you try and, or you wouldn't be able to go about and try and do it?
Well, let's say you had Shire Park,
Yes,
and someone decides, okay, if we don't change this, they could just take one of those lots and just fill it with solar panels. And I don't know what the tax revenue is, if you're looking for your commercial property to get the tax basis, I don't know what kind of income that would be
Mhm.
versus a building.
Not much.
No,
okay.
sure.
All right, so that was the thought, is that we can't really envision vacant lots where it would make sense for the town to want a solar field, or what's the other one, a wind, some kind of wind energy system. And so therefore, let's make it associated with, you know, it's the secondary use on the property, there's already a primary use.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Question, so is the thinking that that's more of a commercial thing, not, that belongs in a commercial zone, not a residential zone?
No, you can do it in a residential even, but associated with a house, Because if you, let's say you had a subdivision and, one of the lots wasn't ideal for a residential house, but it still was a buildable lot, they could clear it completely and put these structures in and, fill it up with solar.
But not if this passes.
If this passes, then they would need a house there first.
And the-
Then they could put the ground mounted solar in.
And that's desirable because we don't want to have
Well-
residential lots just filled with energy equipment. That's more of a commercial use, not a,
That's kind of the way I look at it, but, everybody has their own
I
opinion
think
to it.
last time we looked at this, we believed that the special permit had some,
Yes.
teeth to it, so you could actually stop it from being
Some
built.
gating, yeah, some
And-
gating
and now that-
capability.
Now,
Yeah. certainly
certainly that I understand that's not the case, I would be in favor of changing my vote on that, so.
All right.
Could
Anyone?
I assume they could put obviously they could put a very small house,
Yeah, yep.
something minimal.
so
A
it
shack.
Commercial, they
it
have to
could
build it.
compromise a little bit,
Yeah, and even on a commercial, they have to build a minimum of 2,000 square foot building. So
Yeah.
that's in our zoning, so, after that, they could take the rest of it and put the panels in if they wanted to, so.
Could they clear a residential lot? Are there other restrictions on?
Well, this is allowing, right now, this is the allowed uses, so it's an allowed use right now, to be able to go in there. The way it's written right now, to go in there, clear that lot, put the panels in, they'd have to be, have the same setback as, it's in the zoning right now, which is 25 feet from the sides and the rear. But they're gonna end up doing that anyways, just for clearances for the sun, so.
I'm not sure this is directly related to the solar cell issue, but I thought there were other limitations on clearing lots that,
Once they get a building permit, then they can clear it. And they can actually clear, right now the zoning says you can clear to the back corner of the house that's planned for that lot, up to 25 feet of the sideline, but from sideline to sideline for the first 50 feet. So they can still, without a permit, do that much clearing. So,
All right.
So I think a motion to reconsider, if that's
All right.
appropriate.
Seconded.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to reconsider? John, do you want to come in for a few minutes, or are you just waiting till yours starts below? Yes. Okay, all in favor of reconsidering?
just to
article-
make sure.
Yes. Yeah.
The reconsideration means that we now open for another vote?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
yes, we voted to IP the article last week.
Right.
And, so now we're gonna reconsider our recommendation.
Right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, none, all right, so now we're back to considering Article 28.
What were the substance of the objections last week?
I think it was the exact opposite, which was that, the special we were, thinking that the special permitting would provide the gating, and then everything else would be okay. I think the other issue was, there was some concern, or at least some discussion about envisioning a situation where you might want to have one of these on a parcel that's secluded, and I don't know, maybe it could be a good thing. And so with this, that's not a possibility at all.
Could the special permit allow Latitude to not have a structure, or do you always have to have a structure if this passes?
If this passes, you always have to have a structure.
Isn't that something you could waive?
The only other way that has been done in the past is we add it to the overlay district of solar, and then we could actually go into a parcel, try to add that parcel or more than one parcel to that overlay district, where we could just do it alone.
And that requires a public hearing and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it would make sense, because then people would know about it, they'd have an opportunity to speak about it. You know, it gives the town some protection.
And it would still be a town meeting vote, I think, right?
Yeah.
To create the overlay.
Yeah.
So if there was some compelling reason and the town was rallying behind, you know, we need to put a solar field, whatever, I don't know,
Yeah.
out in the
We've done it
back of
twice.
something, yes. So there is a mechanism, it's not an absolute, yeah, it's- okay.
Part of the process for applying for a special permit is that the neighbors are polled, they are informed.
Yeah, within 300 feet of that property, they're all informed that the special permit request has been made.
So even if the authority to, well, even if the special permitting process does not give the zoning board the authority to actually stop a project, it does give the neighbors the opportunity to voice their concerns.
Yeah. Yeah, that way at least they know about it, just based on the experience that we've had. I mean, people don't object when they put it on their roofs, but there's more of an objection when they put it on the ground mounted.
And the substance of that is they just don't, I mean, I don't,
Just aesthetics.
aesthetics, it looks
Yeah.
like you're
It-
some industrial.
This particular one was a corner lot, and there weren't very many trees in the neighborhood, so, you know, when he put it on the side of his property, it was on the side of his neighbor's property. Just, I think it was almost as close to the neighbor's house as it was his house, so.
Yes.
And, you know, the other houses behind him could all see it too, because it was a corner lot, so. You know, some people find it more objectionable than others, you know, so. And I just throw these things out there, just realizing that now we probably have opened up the door that, you know, I don't know if everyone understood, you know, that this could go, they could just clear a lot and put these things in, so.
No, I don't remember that discussion last year, so I would agree, I don't
Yeah.
think that came up at all
Yeah.
in the conversation, so, all right. All right, anybody entertain a motion on Article 28?
Make a motion to approve?
Seconded.
All right, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All set? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Aye. Nay?
Nay? All right. Abstentions? None. All right. Okay, now we are, thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to
Thank you.
stay and listen to us go through other articles and the budget, but you're also, we're,
I'm gonna go talk to the planning board.
all right. Oh, yes, yes.
Thank you.
See you later. Yeah.
All right. All right, Jack,
I did
we're,
a 2-minute PowerPoint presentation, probably 5 minutes, but interrupt me at any time. It's a little bit of a repeat from last night, but I've updated and rearranged a little bit. So this is really, I guess, a precursor for town meeting and giving folks some updates as to some of our accounts and where we are. Start with snow and ice and some information from FY15, which is the current year. So our snow and ice deficit, we appropriated $175,000 this year. To date, we have spent $625,285. I'm slightly confident that that'll be the ending number. So we have a deficit of $450,000. We put in a FEMA request of approximately $382,000. If that were to be approved, we would receive 75% of that, or about $286,000. And as we were talking about just before the meeting, it sounds like the president approved 2 days of that or about half. So it sounds like we'll get about $143,000 back. So that would give us about a $300,000 deficit at the end of the day here. Free cash last summer, our town accountant had certified $1,109,000, $1,109,475. $453,000 of that had come from the prison mitigation funds. That's over 2 years, and $655,000 of that had come from actually part of that from FEMA, from Hurricane Tropical Storm Irene, and then most of that from different expense budgets that had come in, that folks had left money in their budgets, or revenue that had come in a little bit better than anticipated. We did spend a little bit of that money in the fall. So the capital, we spent $50,500 on a couple of different projects. I think at H All Day for one, and so we have about $403,000 available there. Our other free cash, and we spent.
Has the 50,000 been spent?
It has. It has been appropriated. I believe they did spend it over the Christmas break. They replaced the hot water heater, I think is what they were doing. It was the big number out of that.
Thanks.
We also spent $216,000 from the other part of the free cash. And really, they're one big number, but we broke it up for our own accounting purposes. But so we have $439,000 available there. If we look at state aid, you can say I show you two different years there, the current year and then the upcoming year. This is based on the governor's budget so far. I won't go through all the numbers, but at the end of it, if you total them all up, we have $16,000 in school aid and almost $30,000 in general government aid, and then a couple other ups and downs along the way. So we have an additional, we go from 3.9 million to 3.99 million, so an increase of $22,000, or 0.56%. Not very fun. The total revenues, we have our tax base going from 24.8 million up to 26 million, and that's the results of increasing the tax base by 2.5%, as well as projecting about $650,000 of new growth, and that's a number that I've looked at with the new assessor as well. So we're relatively confident about that number. Local receipts is the big chunk of that is motor vehicle excise tax, building permits, and ambulance receipts. So we did, in closing the $550,000 gap, we did take some additional $150,000 from ambulance receipts to try and, so that's why that number bumped up from the last time we looked at this. State aid we've looked at already. And then available sources is predominantly free cash, but going from $144,000 to $485,000. Again, it's a big use of free cash this year, and so the total revenue going from 32 million up to 33.9 million, or $1.9 million. The next two slides, really, I just put the in order of magnitude, based on the total appropriation, the biggest budgets. Just because really when I was looking at the $550,000 gap, how do we close that? And so you can see elementary school, 4.3% increase. King Philip, I lowered there based on discussions last night with the selectmen. We lowered that our appropriation or our assessment down to $7.7 million, which is still a almost 0.5% increase. The police going from 2.2 to 2.3 million. Health insurance is now the fourth largest budget in our municipality. And I should say King Philip also has health insurance in their budget, so that would be even bigger if we could pull that out. But that right now, we're looking at a 10.86% increase. We are continuing to have negotiations with our insurance advisory group. Well, I can tell you, the negotiations we are struggling with that a little bit. I'm not sure we'll get, we'll let those negotiations play out. County retirement, that's a big increase this year, 1.4 million up to 1.6 and a half, 15.75% increase.
And that's a 3-year bump?
Yeah, my understanding was that was kind of, when they set this, they were kind of warning us that it looked like they were planning on a 3-year trajectory of
Okay.
that same kind
Of
of
that same magnitude?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Did they-
16% next year and the year after?
Yeah,
And I think we talked, I think you said they do it on a projected benefit obligation, right? This isn't a pay-as-you-go number.
No.
It's
No.
the projected obligation. They must have
Yeah.
changed an assumption that
yeah.
that
I'm surprised.
increase the the projected liability,
Yeah.
to get that big of a, because otherwise it feels like, did we change our base of, employees?
I mean, I think, my own, obviously I'm not looking at it at the whole overall actuarial level at the county
Right,
level, but
Right,
you look at the employees who have been in the system for a long time, a lot of them are contributing at the 5 and 6% of their pay is going to fund their retirement. Newer employees, like myself, who've been in the system for 11 or 12 years, we're paying at 11%. 11%. So at some point, we should see improvement and more on the burden going on employees, but obviously we haven't gotten there yet. And then just the last 3, fire and ambulance, DPW operations, and municipal finance. Municipal finance was one place where I made a cut, about $20,000. Our assistant accountant and town accountant are both retiring November, December next year, or December, January. So I've built in a little bit of an overlap to hire a new town accountant. Originally I was going to do it July 1st. I think I've got a strategy with some people that we know coming in, so I can back off that July 1st date a little bit, and we'll be able to accomplish that. Next slide just shows you the dollar impacts of those major budgets. So obviously very quickly the first 2 to 3 to 4 generally eat up all of our new revenue, if they're. Next slide just shows overall expenses. Now that number, there's a little bit of a flaw in the system because we the elementary school has agreed to turn back $150,000 out of their FY15 budget. 100 to 150, but the business manager, short of promising me, has committed that it'll be $150,000. So our intent, based on discussions with the selectmen last night, is we will balance the budget by kind of shorting our employee benefits until the fall, because we can't transfer from an FY15 budget to an FY16 budget. So we'll take that $150,000 from the school, we'll close it out through the free cash process, we'll have that available in the fall, and we'll complete the funding of the employee benefits in the fall. So that's why my 1.7 doesn't match the 1.9 on the revenue side. Less unknowns and solutions than there were yesterday. State aid is still in play, although I don't expect a whole lot of movement there. Hopefully, if there is movement, it'll be to our benefit. As I said, insurance negotiations are still ongoing. I think there's another meeting of the committee coming up this week and next week, and then we're hoping that we'll be able to meet the committee and the selectmen the week, about 2 weeks from now, to try and wrap that up.
Are you in West Suburban?
No,
Okay.
Maya.
Maya, okay.
Yeah, we've had some very great, very,
Right, the last couple of years, it seemed like we were
yeah,
doing pretty
real
well.
low single digits the last three years.
Yeah.
We get crushed 5 or 6 years ago. But and we did bid out to Harvard this year, and that didn't come back favorably. Snow and ice funding, I think that's no longer an unknown, but it's still a problem that we're working on resolving. We got to close that. It looks like a $300,000 gap now, but I think we've got some ideas. Julie and I we've got some budgets still on the municipal side that we can close to close that number, and then we'll take the FEMA money when we get that, and I think we'll be able to get that down and resolve that through the normal process. Last slide, just final thoughts. As I said, $100,000 to $150,000 from the elementary school should kind of get us over the hump if we go down this path. And then the FEMA reimbursement is, hopefully they'll process that quickly. I was glad to see the president acted on it today, even though he didn't, or yesterday, he didn't do exactly what I wanted him to do, but at least he gave us an answer. And now we just got to find out the timing of when that money comes in. So, I gave you a copy of the budget as well. It shows all those things that I just talked about very quickly, so I'm open to questions, but at the end of the day, we do have a balanced budget. I know Arlie's head is probably going to explode.
The notion of a balanced budget is highly reliant on.
How about a balanced budget with an asterisk on it? Does that make you feel better?
So let's make sure,
Sure.
I understand the numbers on it. So we've got $433,000 worth of draw on free cash, plus another $150 for $680,000 of draw on free cash that we expect to have. Is that what you just told us?
We have 350 of free cash, kind of our traditional free cash side. We have 83,000 that we're drawing from what we this year are calling the capital side of free cash and applying that towards our debt. So that's 430,000.
Yeah.
And then we've got a total of 430, but what was 280 plus an additional 150 of ambulance receipts. So,
No, I think his math is the 350 plus the 83 plus the
Oh, plus the
150
150.
coming
Oh,
out
yeah,
in the
yeah,
fall,
okay. Yeah.
which adds up to 583, so
580,
roughly
yeah.
600, yeah. So I think you're correct in that, so we're gonna be having to dig through that next year in
Is that the
terms
right
of replacing the
interpretation?
yes,
revenue,
that is the right interpretation.
yes.
So that's almost worth 2 asterisks, my hunch. I'm just feeling.
Well, the 87,000 is, we're still meeting the critical capital needs.
Yeah.
And the 87,000 is off of the prison mitigation, which can be used to reduce debt.
For capital purchases,
capital
right, which is what we're
purchases.
doing here,
So
yes.
we're spending the full
Right.
prison mitigation grant on the capital items. We're just using 83,000 of it towards debt
Right.
as opposed to need. And we are fulfilling all of the critical need.
And that money effectively won't be back in the budget, so maybe a more realistic is we're spending 500 of free cash to plug the budget with, so unless we've got, some bigger revenue projections next year or some kind of one-time-ish expenses in this year's budget that we know, we won't be having to pay again, we're gonna be working out of a hole in the 17 budget.
And this was also the year of the 53rd week.
Yeah, so there'll be
So all of
some
the-
element of savings right off the bat in
all
next
of
years
the,
budget, yes.
Salary budget line items are higher proportionately this year because of the additional.
And the increase because of the school kindergarten,
Yeah.
and that's about $240,000, I believe.
Two
Yeah.
50-ish, yes. Now, we'll be spending the same 250 next year, so we're not really getting
Right.
that back, but, mean, we won't see the same level of increase, though. We should require the same level of increase. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Arlie, just your initial thinking, it's, you know, we can say we're going into next year with eyes wide open, but we do have, you know, we're gonna have a little bit of a battle there. I know, Jack, you brought up last night that, you know, at some point over the next year or so, or 1 to 2 years, we should see a little bit of a bump in new growth with a lot of the activity that's going on around the town. So that could alleviate a little of the pressure next year, but that is in the future and unknown as to the exact timing. Yeah,
I mean, isn't this supposed to be the better times? This is not the bad times anymore, right?
I don't know,
so there's.
maybe it's me, but,
It feels like.
I haven't had a good
I wouldn't-
state aid time since I've been here.
Right.
It's a better time in terms of local receipts.
Right,
I mean,
But
that's
the-
true. I mean,
but the state-
local receipts are significant, but the state,
yeah,
I mean, we're still behind 2006.
right. 10 or 15 years ago, you could guarantee yourself a couple $100,000 in additional state aid each year, and we haven't seen
It's
that.
been killing us.
Right. So that's,
But
I
that's
mean, the
new
same
normal.
side, that's kind of, what's
It is,
that?
that's the new normal.
The new normal, without a doubt, I mean.
You know, in that, taking that into consideration.
Right.
You know, we really have to look at the, you know, do we spend that kind
Right.
of free cash
Right,
on an operating budget?
yeah. I think the other thing relative to, you know, these are supposed to be the good times. I mean, we're spending, just to use round numbers, let's call it 300,000 on 2 initiatives in the elementary schools that, you know, on the one hand are a relief for the individuals that have to pay it, but the full, you know, the full day kindergarten,
Bus.
and the busing is, you know, 2 things that aren't in the budget that we currently are coming off of, so that's kind of a bump in spending.
And that's why I thought, you know, my question about asking if they could do it in at least 2 years, through half this year, half next year, I think would make a significant impact to our budget, but wasn't very well received, so, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting, I don't know, maybe 10+ years ago, and certainly further back, when almost no one did full-day kindergarten, or very few, okay.
Right.
You know, you could see why we're not gonna pay for that, or the town's.
Right,
you know,
and I think it's a great goal, I think
Yeah.
it is something the town should be moving towards, but it's also, you know, my opinion,
Yeah.
my
It's
opinion only, is that I think less than half the towns around us actually do pay full, you know, full-day kindergarten.
Have free full-day kindergarten.
And most of them do charge tuition, so,
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. According to when I met with Ingrid, she said that most of the towns now are, I think we had 6 students, I may be off.
No,
No, that is
I know
correct.
that.
No, that part
I'm
about,
talking about the
he's on
towns.
the.
But I don't think they're charging. It's becoming part of the operational consideration. and-
I've looked around and it's about, it seems like it's about 50/50.
Okay, well, her indication was that most of the towns are now providing it as a service. I, for one, and I don't have any grandkids going in it, but I fully support that.
I do too, I fully support the concept, it's just
Think
that
we need
in a
to do
tough
that.
year, it's a tough nut to swallow all in one year.
Yeah. She has been an exceptional partner.
No, and I completely agree with that, I think she did a great job in the budget presentation, and it was very clear, and
Yeah.
everybody got to understand it, and it was great.
Yeah, and returning about $150,000 to us this year, which in some prior administrations would have gone to another 12 copiers, so it's you don't get choked up over that. She's been a good business partner. I don't see this as an extraordinarily out of character year. You know, we've had a shortfall every single year since 2004. When I came on board, we've never started at a balanced budget ever. And our free cash has been going up. Now, we had some exceptions, but you know, we have a pretty good track record of underspending these budgets, and in fact, every year. So,
Most departments.
you know,
The snow and ice is the thing, geez, my lord, this is the worst year we've ever had.
But that you can pass that off to the tax rate next year, right?
We could, but we never have.
Right.
Well, you can be, but then you'd have to cut
Right,
something in
right.
next year's budget
Right, to offset it,
or have an override.
yeah.
I thought you could just add it to set the tax rate, and then that goes on top of it automatically.
No, because then that would end up being like an override, and you can't,
Right.
you still gotta stay within the levy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we tax at the,
Yeah. At
very
2.5,
close to the levy, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing it does, because it gives us the flexibility of dealing with it later in the year. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the only advantage to underfunding it is that every town underfunds it, every town.
Yeah, no, they do.
So it's, because it's the only one we can, exceed in terms of the budget, so.
We did add another 25,000, so we're gonna be
So
at
we're building it up
200,000.
little by little. Yeah, but,
And
Ten
another
years from now,
25 plan.
we'll be in.
What's that?
Another 25 plan, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
Executive order number 3.
yeah.
on another matter, last time we looked at the budget, we saw that there was another 64,000 coming in for the dispatch. And that had to be added, was the impression. Has that now been accounted for?
No, because we've got, I think I've got the 25 in there.
Yes.
Because we've still got the 25 from this year unspent. So I think we're gonna, if we need to, depending on the timing of when we get going here, but I think if we take the 25, the dispatch, the rec will be able to retain that in their retained earnings. And then if we add this 25, I think based on the timing, we'll probably be all right. I think of a worst case scenario, I'd have to transfer some money in there in the fall, but we're moving painfully slow.
64 might be generous.
Yeah, because we probably won't hire a director until, after January 1st of next year.
Oh, okay.
We'll also be getting rent
And then,
revenue
Yeah.
from the building.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because that was just the cost to each of the participants as opposed to part of
Yeah,
that cost.
we might be able to offset our
Yeah,
rent to the
yeah.
allocation. I might have to look at that again. I mean, when I was 555,000, there was no way I was gonna try and add that in. I might take one more look at that to see if I can add that in.
I had the impression from the discussion at the time that it was something that had to be accounted for. Now, if we have 25 and we can roll that in effect forward, then the gap is relatively small, but,
Yeah, we have the 25 in, and then we have this year's 25.
so that though works by pushing the 25 to free cash, is that what that says? I guess because there's another
No.
budget we know we underspent, no, is that not it?
Because it's like the regional school, so that money will go to
Okay, so
dispatch.
that's, yeah. Right, okay.
Yeah, I was thinking a little, last night after the meeting, I was thinking a little whether, yeah, our 150 will all work.
Buyer's
but-
remorse.
No. Well, not so much that is, but more along Arlie's lines, the feeling that, boy, it feels like it's a little tight here, and I was debating whether, certainly not so much across the board cuts, but it feels like if you wanted to spend a little time, you could probably tighten up a few numbers here and maybe get 100 or 150. So it's not like there's 300 and we can wipe out our usage of free cash, but, and, conversely, I do think over the last few years, Jim, to your point, we've done a good job of managing the budgets and the finances, and even though now we're gonna kind of dip our free cash down pretty far, when I look through the budget, I think if it was, okay, listen, we gotta save like you know, something's come up, we have to save like 200 because we're gonna have to spend it on X later next year, that via transfers, we could probably, you know, manage that within the budget that we have here. So I felt a little better, and I was like, you know, at some point, there's some element of, we're moving such relatively small amounts around that there's probably easier ways to do it than just continually kind of going through everything with a fine tooth comb. You know, when I think 150,000 on 30 million, it's like, all right, there's better ways to manage it, and if people are comfortable with the budget that we have here, you know, it certainly works. I don't think we're putting ourselves at any great, you know, risk that something's gonna go off the tracks, and so, I wasn't overly, concerned that, you know, to your point a little bit earlier, I think the initial feeling is, geez, it feels a little different than the last couple of years. And I might say, you know, if you look at the detail there, I don't know, we've been doing between 100 and 300 of free cash each of the last few years, because to your point, Jim, we keep underspending the budget, so we're generating free cash. And there's an element that we're just kind of continually rolling forward the same couple 100,000 of underspending. And so, you know, we might be a smidge higher than maybe the last couple of years, but nothing, you know, I don't think we've dramatically changed course here or anything. So overall, I was feeling pretty comfortable with it.
Dave?
Yes.
Just one more point, we have allocated 316,000 in capital.
Yes.
We intend to spend, those are the priority needs, as you know, we talked through last night, but in there are 2 police cars as well as a new pickup truck. You know, we could always, if things change between now and the next 3 weeks, that can be pared down, and some of that could be reallocated to debt as well.
Mhm.
So there is still some play in that. I mean, some of the things we have to do,
Right,
but we don't have to buy 2 police cars. We'd like to, but we don't have to.
right,
So some of the things there are still in play.
right, right.
So we are gonna have a capital article.
So
316,000.
you got a list near the end, the last page in your packet.
Right. Although before we move on to that, maybe just any, you know, any other comments that anyone, any other thoughts on the budget or questions or, you know, we could, as we go through the rest of the stuff, if it's percolating in your head, we can always come back to it if something comes up. But,
Was the 83.6 to pay capital, was that in the last version of the budget you saw?
No, last one meaning, before tonight, no.
Why, what is that doing? Is we just have expensive debt that we can get rid of now, or?
Well, we're paying the debt service, so it's not a pay down.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like we're refinancing, but we're paying the debt service.
The debt service.
So it's principal and interest. I mean, it's paying debt that's in the operating budget.
It's the credit card bill that's already in our budget. It's the included debt that we're paying down.
It's debt service,
Right.
so there's interest and some.
In principle.
So
I mean, we don't really,
next year, if we didn't pay, when we pay this 83,000 down, that's, which is always a good thing to do, there's another more or less 83, or maybe 80,000 next year, that's in the operating budget?
some
you
of
can
them could be the last year
Could
of.
be the last year.
Yes, yeah. There's at
That's
least,
what I'm asking.
there's
Are
at
we-
least
is it
40
mostly-
I noticed.
you can see on the 5th or 6th page in, there's a debt schedule. Page 6, I guess. And that's not a real complete picture because of those yellow lines there, but that shows you that the debt is going in 2016 from 533 down to 466. But those 2 big components there are, we're just paying interest this year. The ones that are in yellow, and I say more, because we're just paying interest only on those this year. So that's good news, huh?
Yeah.
The spirits are telling us something.
Ready to take off?
Bunch of spirits.
One thing we're doing with the school this year is hiring a facilities manager. How's that? Hopefully somebody knows what he's doing.
That's apropos the tornado that somebody
Yes.
started in here. Okay, so of the 83,000, how much is interest and how much is amortization?
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. I can certainly have the treasurer. She has schedules. I can tell you. But,
It's not excluded.
no, the excluded is that very small middle portion. It's a big number,
Right.
but it's only 4 lines. The hopefully that land acquisition, so the third from the bottom line there.
Uh-huh.
The thought process is once, if we keep going down the path of constructing the police station and redoing the fire station, we would borrow some more money for that purpose and take that new debt along with this debt and exempt all of that. So that'll move from this section down to the next section. That's the hope anyway. So it moves it out of the operating budget, really,
Yeah, that's-
Do you want me to? And I kind of think the rest of the packet is self-explanatory, but if there's pages in here that you want me to go through, I'd be happy to. I'll give you a little bit of a KP history, just not that it's that much, hasn't been that much of a topic this year, but I'll show you the average and it's the 5-year average of all it. I'm going to just tell you that
Right there.
that's just, yeah, that page.
Uh-huh. This is our, you said?
That's
Right,
our
our
assessment.
assessment.
Uh-huh.
The second to last page of your packet also works on King Philip, and it shows you the, I took their sheet that they generally give to us, and plugged in our adjusted assessment, just so that we could see what the impact was to the King Philip budget and to the other towns, so that they would know what to match. So our assessment is at 5.47%. It's the 7,709,000. So overall, that reduces way up in the upper right. May not be highlighted very well there, but it reduces the King Philip budget by 291,000 compared to what their request was.
And that's the outcome of negotiation that you've had, or that's, there's been a change in the formula?
Conversation, I would say. And I think, frankly, I think Rentham and particularly Rentham, but Rentham and Plainville are both struggling to get to this number. Rentham is almost 3 percentage points Rentham is 1.5 percentage points ahead above us. But I understand they have a very large elementary school budget this year. And Plainville is almost 3 points ahead of us, so they're, even though it's a smaller number, but they've got a smaller base to work with.
So the 29.1 million was their requested level service budget, is that correct?
So,
Sorry, I should remove.
Yes, it's,
That is correct.
exactly, it's the 28.8 plus 300, right?
And you take that down by, and it's been reduced in this calculation by 300,000.
nearly, 291, yep.
And
I'm meeting with Dr. Zelinski tomorrow,
Right, right.
about some other matters, but she has seen this and we will have a conversation. They said they went to the Rentham FinCom meeting last night and met with a lot of resistance. That was the only feedback I got so far.
So the number that they requested is what they do every year. It's the preliminary budget that they have to follow in February. It's always a high number, always. I have met with them individually since then. We think what we're suggesting is probably pretty close to what we're. And it worked well last year. We went through the same process last year, got to the same place, and I think that's pretty good.
Actually, Jack, do you have a sheet, the one number I was thinking since it's coming up in our articles, do you have the sewer budget?
Also, I can tell you it's gonna be about $100,000 to $110,000. I don't have a breakdown for you.
Would that be closer to the town meeting, you'll probably have something? Or
I
should we
think
just wait and-
Bob has a number.
Okay.
I just haven't had time to kind of go
Okay.
through it with him.
Alright, so then we got the capital items on the last page.
Yeah, I got the water division, and the very last page is the capital. So what we're, talking about, a lease for an ambulance, which would be about $235,000. They expect $10,000 to $20,000 of trade-in value on the outgoing ambulance. And then we have, seven other.
So what does that mean, a lease?
A lease
So
for
this is the-
$235,000.
This is the first year of a lease?
No, that's the total cost.
So, in what sense is it a lease?
Well, I think we would, what typically happens is the chief and I will go out to if we give him, we say, okay, he'll go out to a couple of the leasing companies that work with the vendors that are on the state bid list, and he'll give us a couple different schedules, likely a 3 and a 5 year schedule, and we can talk about what type of lease terms and which ones would be most advantageous to us. But we would be financing $215,000 to $225,000 through that lease program, and we would try and schedule that so that it would be paid for, ideally not until FY17, but maybe late in FY16.
So I say these don't add up to 403,
I agree with you.
because, and the difference is presumably the lease.
Yeah, and they don't even add up to. I think I didn't print the cell formula, the number in the cell formula that had that number, but it's. I can add it up for you real quick.
If you took the lease out, it's about $316,000.
Yeah, I think it even came in a little bit lower than that.
Did it?
Yeah. I think I made a executive decision to go from expedition to explorer.
Yeah.
So it's 288,907, if I did that right. For the free cash items.
I'm sorry, what was the number?
288,907.
All that 290,000.
Same answer twice, so
Yeah,
that's
all
a
right.
good sign.
And leases actually make sense for a town that borrows as cheaply we do. There's actually someone else out there who provides funding at lower cost.
It's six to a half dozen, you know, we can go through, we can borrow. I can have,
Yeah, maybe, I guess that's the other, well, in the context here, is it like lease to own? This isn't like,
at least to own.
it's
yeah.
lease to own, okay,
so
so
it's
it is
a
just another means of, it's just
Yeah.
borrowing under a different name effectively.
I can have Cheryl look at that, the cost differential with coal and
So, we're financing 235,000 is the
Correct.
suggestion.
Yeah.
And so presumably, round number, something like, that's $60,000, $70,000 this year, 70,000 next year, 70,000, so on. So
yeah,
this,
although we would delay it, you know, because they're gonna construct the vehicle and,
Right.
and all that, so maybe not 70,000 this year, a smaller portion of that, but over 3 years,
so apropos our budget discussions, this
Yep.
lease builds in an increase in expenses next year of between 50 and 100 without knowing that distance, right?
correct.
Okay. You just need to switch.
And it does go to the next, yes.
The argument's always been that the ambulance generates revenue, so why not spread that in a sense? Costs. But apropos the total, the 500,000 discussion that we had earlier, this is building in a higher cost next year, but it's also gonna happen.
One other, the school has talked about the all-day roof and needing to do that. It's not, it doesn't, there's some repairs that are going on now that would be covered by insurance. But the roof itself, the shingle and the roof itself needs to be replaced sometime or another layer put on. Either this year or next year. So they're evaluating that. Obviously, we don't have. I assume that's going to be a relatively big number. We don't have the free cash available to do that. So they may come to us and talk to us about a borrowing for that. I'm kind of hoping we can push it off till at least the fall. But they've got a lot going on with the roof itself now. So
So it might come back in this budget, is what you're saying?
could. Because I hadn't seen any capital from the school, so I just reached out to them to make sure that was what I thought. And she said, and I think it kind of came out because of all the damage that came to the roof this year, that they really need to get to that roof sooner rather than later.
While folks are reading, I had a very basic question. On the tax levy base line, the first row on your revenue budget, if I read FY15 budget 23.7 million, roughly,
Yep. In
Does-
FY15, yeah.
right, does that 23.7 million include 598K of,
No,
okay,
no.
so I add those three together,
Yep.
got it. And out of curiosity, I don't remember going back far, but new growth. In FY13, new growth was less than the tax levy increase of 2.5%. FY14, the new growth exceeded the tax levy increase, the 2.5 standard, and we also have that projected for FY16. Is there a normal? I mean, is this a exceptionally good new growth year? Is this the new normal? Is this middle of the road?
It's a good year. I mean, I think we've gone from the Village of River's Edge and the medical building have down on 1A have propped us up the last couple of years. Village of River Edge, that's the condominiums up by Millis.
Okay.
Those are coming to completion. But now the Fox Run subdivision, which is down on the Rentham side, and a couple of smaller subdivisions are carrying us this year. There's at least 2 40Bs that have 140 and 156 homes. that seem, I guess I would risk calling them friendly 40Bs at this point, because they seem to be very high quality, good tax generating, low impact to the school type situations, because they're mostly 55 and over. There's at least two, and then possibly one very big one at Southwood coming up in the next couple of years. That there's two that I think, one at 106, 108 Main Street, one on the Boy Scout property that I think are more than likely going to happen in the next year, and then the Southwood one will be developing over the next couple of years.
106, 108 is already gone through conservation.
Yeah,
That one, we're going to start pretty soon.
yeah, and he was talking about $600,000 homes, 40 of them.
Boy Scout one is still in the planning stage, and hasn't filed for any permits, but the 106, 108 is moving along.
And just to be clear, the Boy Scouts have no connection to this land.
It's the old Boy Scout
It's the
land,
old Boy
yeah.
Scout.
The old Boy
Yeah,
Scouts,
they-
they're old Boy Scouts are on the table, so.
It's a term we all are endeared to over the years.
But we're anticipating the questions to the next Scott.
They did not own the land.
Yeah, every year when I look at this, I sort of wonder, I see now I'm on your major expense components on page 4 of your slide. Basically the big ticket items go up every year by 4, 5, almost 6%. That's the level funding. I always wonder, how can that go up by 5 or 6%, but we have a tax levy cap at 2.5? I know there's one-time things we can do to help reduce electrical costs, and there's very innovative ideas that you always bring to the table. But at just a raw systemic level, it seems to me, my read of this is that if new growth starts to slow down, that's what's kind of keeping us afloat on a really recurring year after year. Because the state aid's at the new norm, right?
Those sources that we can control, which is not a lot, would allow us to meet this basic budget increase. 2.5 doesn't.
Oh, I know.
Never going to meet our
I
needs
know.
in any given year.
Right.
It's what we have to live with. So these other sources, folks say we don't want new growth. Well, it's our lifeblood in many respects. We want it managed, and we want it controlled, because we don't want the expense component of it to exceed the revenue component of it. But new growth is our lifeblood.
One of the other new realities that, it's, again, I tread lightly here because it's not my area of expertise, but one of the new realities too is we've continued to see new growth over the past 10 years, a lot of new growth relative to what we've seen in the past, yet we've seen the school populations go down. So there's less, there's more homes, but there's obviously just doing the simple math, there's got to be less kids in the homes. I think we're going from, an average of 4 kids in a family or whatever the number was down to 3 or 2. So that's been helping us a lot too.
It was below the 90s.
Yeah.
Literally. We were over 1,000 kids in the 90s in the elementary school. We were below 1,000 kids and have been for the last 2-3 years and projected to be for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So enrollment is down compared to what we did 10, 15 years ago.
Which should drop costs. I know that's brought up every year.
Well, it doesn't escalate them, maybe is another way to say it.
Yeah,
Wish you had photos.
I don't know if
picture
it
of
props it,
your eye.
but it doesn't escalate it.
Anyway, that's just an observation.
We don't get 11 grand per child. It's not a linear equation,
No,
unfortunately.
Okay then.
What are the capital warrant articles?
Oh, you want to know what those items are?
No, what warrant article?
Oh,
Oh, that would be
8 or 9?
article either 8 or 9.
I presume 8 for the free cash and 9 for the,
I think that sounds right. And then, Bob is still coming into the selectmen at our next meeting to talk about roads, but I'm trying to lightly discourage him from coming in. We've got a pretty significant amount of Chapter 90 money this year, so I don't plan on borrowing any money for road programs this year, because we've got an extra. I forget, it was an extra 100-something thousand that came in late from last year's program, and then we just got another 390 from this year. So we've got some good chunks of money, plus he's got some still projects that he's got to finish up that we borrowed for last year. So I think we're in good shape. You'll still see a lot of road work get done this year. We're not looking to borrow additional funds, so that, Article
Article 9.
9, I think we'll
Right.
just IP that.
It's 10.
10, you're correct.
10, yes.
So,
So
Yes,
these
you-
are Article 8, Jack. And
Yeah.
then is the ambulance 9?
the ambulance we've done under 9 before, whether we lease it or borrow.
Okay. Maybe just a quick walk through each of the items. I mean, some I remember when the chiefs were in, they explained a couple of their requests. But we did not discuss with Bob his capital, so maybe especially the DPW ones.
Okay. I'll speak as intelligently as I can, but here there's a cap there. So the gas detectors, obviously, those are he goes in and they're looking for gas leaks. There's 3 of them. The ones we have are out of the manufacturer's expected life and service program. And then the chief's car, that's a 2006 Expedition. I'm suggesting that we replace that with an Explorer or similar car, but likely an Explorer since we're mostly a Ford shop. Police vehicles, Chuck is still looking to see if he will do kind of the SUV version model or the sedan model, but they're both obviously lettered cars for the department. As you know, we're generally on either a 2-car or 3-car replacement program to try and keep them the fleet up to standard. And we've still got some of the old Crown Vic models that will still be probably another year or 2 before we get those out of the front line of the system. You'll still see those on the road today. Portable radios, again, is for the police department. He's talking about refurbishing the ones that are still in decent shape, and then buying 12 new ones. And those are obviously the ones the officer wears on their body. I think it's a little over $12,000 to $14,000, I think, for the new ones, and then $7,000 for the refurbishing of the old ones. The fuel monitoring system is it's the gas pumps and the system, the kind of computer system that goes behind that allows us to have pumps up at the DPW. And there's a computer system there that allows vehicle operators to go up, enter their code that goes along with the vehicle, and it gives us a analysis of so we can watch trends on the different vehicles and monitor their mileage and miles per gallon, etc. But that really needs to, of all the DPW items, that was the one thing that they've brought forward. And then Mr. Stillman might be able to speak more intelligently to this one than I can, but so correct me if I go out of place. But the DPW system, they're on kind of a low band or older system, and they need to get I guess for years now they've been threatening us that we need to get off and get up into the high band.
VHF to UHF. Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know where they are. Are they in the 30s or you don't know?
Yes, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, that's real low. I mean, most DPWs are in the 150s megahertz, and it works great. But the old 30s that's not so good.
And I thought I'd heard that eventually we're gonna lose that lower band.
I don't know about that, I mean, the
Okay.
T-band is the big issue,
Yeah.
the 470 to 512.
But it, just along with, you know, the new regional dispatch center will also be dispatching, have the ability to dispatch the DPW as well, so I mean, just along with that project, it would be a good time to upgrade that radio system. And then an F-250, this is actually going to the foreman on the highway division, Marty. And he's driving around in a, you know, very old blue, early 80s, I think, pickup
Go-kart.
truck.
You serious?
Yeah, and I shouldn't tell you any secrets, but my son worked, he was a college student, worked for the DPW. He was in the, like 1979 pickup, so Marty was doing better than John was, but they're still an old blue Ford pickup. And we have, you know, we bought 3 pickups, was it last year or 2 years ago, for the foreman, and you know, believe me, they greatly appreciate that. There are some old vehicles. We do have we didn't replace the transfer station truck. We've got to do that big truck at some point. You know, because that's the one that hauls the big 18-wheeler out to I don't know, somewhere out in western Mass, Holyoke or somewhere. That's got over 300,000 miles on it, probably up to 400,000 now. But, that'll have to be replaced at some point.
Alright. Alright, let's see. Alright, any final questions on the budgets or capital? Alright, we got a, let's kind of go through the remaining articles and we'll discuss as we
Did you
go
want
along.
us for those, David?
A couple of them, so I'll try and do those ones first, so, and then you're welcome to stay through the end, but Article 2, I assume we don't have any unpaid bills.
I do not believe we do.
Right, okay. Alright. Article 4, this is the compensation schedule increase. I mean, it's the same percentage we had the last couple of years.
Motion, chair.
So the 1.5%, I realize I don't think we have a lot of people on the compensation schedule, but, I mean, it's the same percentage we've had the last couple of years, but, how does that compare, you know, like say relative to the union steps in their contracts? Is this roughly in a similar vein, or?
Mostly the same. I think the public safety, the last contract was probably a little bit below that.
Okay.
Because their steps are, for these folks, is 2.5%, so
Okay.
they're getting a 4% raise.
Okay,
Some of the public safety ones, we've done 4s in the past, but I think the last contract we were a little tighter than that.
okay,
DPW is, they are finishing up a contract where they have a merit system, so they're
a little different.
a little different. So it's not, and then the clerical contract, they have a 1.5% step,
Okay.
COLA, so.
Alright. Let's see. Alright, water we reviewed with Bob, so we've seen that, that's Article 6. Article 5 was the budget we just went over. I think the sewer will wait till, we'll just do that one the night of town meeting, just to see the details since we don't have it.
Yeah, I'm sorry we don't have that,
Nope.
but that should be an easy.
Yeah,
one to do.
Article 8, which is what we just reviewed, the capital budget in cash. Article 9 is.
By the way, I should say, I think it makes great sense for you guys to be handling the capital budget as well. That's really much more efficient, so it's a good,
Thank you.
good step.
Yeah. 9, 10. Article 13, Jack, I don't know if you had a chance or if you wanted, we had
Yeah.
mentioned that we'd be willing to, if you wanted to entertain combining some of the revolving funds, some of the small ones and just get rid of them and effectively push them back into the operating budget. Conversely, we're a little late in the game, we could look at that for, like in the fall and the spring, next spring. We weren't, it was just more a suggestion we had in our discussions as we were going through it, if it was something you were interested in looking through.
Well, the two that I thought were kind of no-brainers that we could cut out were, number one, we can adjust the police department. Not that we would have to adjust the police department budget right now, but we could cut that and we can adjust that. And then the other one was the assessors. I don't think that's a big ticket item. Number 10. I didn't talk to the library, but there was a lot of passion about putting those in, so
Right.
I wasn't very eager to try and wrangle that away from them. And actually, I think lost library materials, etc. It kind of actually makes sense just to revolve that money, if you will.
Is there any money in there?
Well, they tend to. There's no. It doesn't tend to be.
Goes out?
No, it just comes in and they lose a book and then they go buy a new book.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Our thought was if we wanted to really simplify it, maybe get rid of all the ones under 10,000, but, I don't know, as I think about it,
I mean,
if we're really just one or two, unless these two, I mean, I agree, they're pretty small with a cap of $1,000 and,
the land use ones don't really have big budgets anymore,
Right.
so $5,000 does kind of make.
right,
Not that we couldn't put $5,000 into their budget, but
yeah. Yeah, and we were thinking of it more from the perspective of, if it would simplify the administration. And so, I don't know, this could be
No,
something more,
it's-
and if it's really not,
it's
because it's all,
painless to Julie, so it's.
okay. Maybe we ought to just leave them as they are this year, and, you get your new town accountant, if they have a different view on wanting to spend time with revolving funds and want to bring it up next spring, that's fine.
One of the things I think we'll look at over the next year is as Ray gets more and more comfortable, for lack of a better word, the town planner, is looking at some of those, particularly the way the planning board, because it's come up in a lot of conversation this year, is how their fees are processed, and we may at least look at, I'm not sure we'll go that route, but at least look at changing the planning board fees to be more like the Board of Health, and so that they're more of just they are revenues that come into the general fund, and then we have an engineer or a consultant who we paid for out of the budget, so that we are more controlling those costs, and we know what those costs are up front rather than having them spiral, to use a word, but to say it lightly, we've had a problem with that over the last couple of years, and so
Okay.
So that may change some of the way the bigger planning board accounts work here. So
All right. Okay. That was that one. Article 17, which is the King Philip Turf Committee proposal, which is to, we had a brief discussion when the schools were in here, and, one issue I see here, is there an amount that's being asked for? Because there's no dollars in the article, so I'm not quite clear what we would be voting on here.
no, it'll be in the motion, and it'll be about $200,000.
It's about 200. Okay.
you know, and it certainly is a unique, process that's going through, because it's a turf committee that I'm not quite clear who appointed that committee, but somewhere in the school administration appointed that committee, and I've met with them a couple of times just because they've asked me to. But so it's not really an item that the school committee is supporting, because they don't want to put it up against the education funding. So it's an interesting item.
Right. So, I don't know if everyone's familiar or not familiar with this, because I have a little familiarity. We could do a little 5-minute discussion. So, you've probably seen the signs out, you know, and is it the turf committee that's actually raising the funds?
Yeah.
Okay. So the King Philip Turf Committee, if you look at the signs, they're trying to raise $1 million to put in a artificial turf field at the high school, replace the grass field. They've raised $400,000 to date, if you see the signs around the 3 towns. And so I think, I went to 1 or 2 meetings myself, and Scott has been at one as well. I think the feeling is within the committee that they're kind of reaching the limits on a reasonable time to raise the amount of, like they've raised kind of as much as they're going to get in the near term, and they're asking the 3 towns to effectively fund the rest of it, which is about $600,000, and we're roughly 1/3 of the KP allocation. So to Jack's point, our piece would be about $200,000, and I believe the idea is we would fund it via debt within the town here. If each town can come up with however they want to fund their piece of it. I assume they have to get all 3 towns to approve it. I'm not quite sure what happens if one town approves and the other 2 don't. Do they get the money just from the one town? It's not really like you said, it's not really going through the school, so it doesn't feel like it has the same. 2 out of 3 have to agree.
No, it does, because the money does end up going to the school district.
Okay.
So it
Takes 2 out of 3.
Interesting.
So
I think on capital,
I think it's all 3.
I think it's gonna take all 3.
Okay.
And if one town fails, then none of the
Then the money, then we wouldn't have to come up with our share. That's what King Philip's attorney has said, is it takes all 3.
Okay. All right. And again, each town could fund it how they see fit. I don't know. I think in the discussions Norfolk, we were thinking we would fund it via debt, or
That's what Pat Sneed and I talked
Yes.
about. Certainly, I think we'd be more than open to other ideas. Probably may want to lease it or something.
That's what I was thinking.
Obviously we don't have it'd be tough to come up with the cash. We can't use CPC funds because you can't move CPC funds to another town.
Yeah, interesting.
We did go down that path. So I don't see any obvious, unless we want to do either a debt exclusion, a capital exclusion, I don't think we want to do that.
no.
There are savings in the school budget, which is what, I sat there while the turf committee tried to really get the school committee on board. I think they were talking about $40,000 to $50,000 of annual savings for field maintenance that they'd be able to save, for bringing in more additional loom and reseeding, and they actually end up renting out space to other facilities. That all costs they could avoid. So there is a good savings to so it'll have a positive impact to the King Philip budget, which is, I think, good. So in a way, I kind of wish the committee and everybody else had all gotten around this and rallied, because I'll be honest, I have a wife who's a coach and a daughter who's a participant over there, and the field is just awful. It's just,
The field is off. I mean, I support it, but remember a little bit on what Jack said. The one part that bothers me with this is that I think the school has to be more involved. It just somehow to me doesn't seem right that private funding and town funding are the only sources to fund this. And I feel the school should have a place in this role, whether it be just to reflect the savings or whether they take E&D funds or whatever. They should have some skin in the game in this. And I don't know why that they're not. I guess the only reason I can think of is that there's just such a disconnected process that they've been involved in that there's no centralized effort to try and make this thing work. Really sound financials go around it. That's the part that troubles me. This is a little bit of a dark approach.
Yeah.
And it's kind of against my nature. I'm a little concerned about how they're going like this.
Do we know what King Philip's C&D's fund is at now, balance?
They've put 150 into the budget so far. Nobody knows at this particular point in time what they're going to end up with. They had over 400.
I think it's actually higher. I think Paul
over-
said
is it up
at
now?
the meeting last week that they will be around 600. I wasn't quite sure what the reference point was.
They've only put 150 into the budget.
Right,
Into the
right.
first budget that you've seen.
I mean, this seems like a good place to contribute something to the.
Well, that's my point, right?
Yeah.
They should be partnering in this. I mean, they're I mean, we're all benefactors in terms
Right.
of the community.
Not the whole thing,
But
but
they're
some
the true
part of it.
benefactor of the process, and not only just in savings, but they should have some capital in this. And
Right.
I've raised the issue, but there doesn't seem to be one person that you can talk to that will give you a reasonable answer, because it's just been a very disjointed effort.
I mean, I think the principal and the athletic director are behind this 100%.
Well, of course they are.
Right.
Sure.
The superintendent's in a difficult situation because the school committee won't jump on board.
Right.
I know, at least what I've heard them say is they're struggling with education versus spending on education versus spending on non-education.
But it is education. I mean, the
agree.
athletics are part of
I
it.
nominate you for school committee.
It is part of it. And,
Yep.
It's absolutely right, Rick. I mean, in high schools, that is a component of the educational process.
the band uses the field. I mean,
And
so
absolutely. That part kind of,
Yeah.
I would like to see this all on one page with a sound financial plan and all the partners in this process.
right.
Clearly defining what their role and responsibilities are gonna be, and then let's do it. This is too ad hoc for me, even though I support it. I support the field. I'm not thrilled with the way they're going at it.
And I know they tried to, the committee, the turf committee tried to convince the school committee to allow them to basically take ownership of the field, because I guess that's been done in other communities, and then they could construct the field, without the prevailing wages and all
Okay,
that
right.
stuff, and it's a much better model. The King Philip School Committee, and I think under the direction of their attorney, has said they don't want to do that. So I agree with you 100%. I wish this wasn't goosey, maybe that's not the right term, but I give all the credit in the world to the turf committee, who's raised $400,000 and been at it for a couple of years.
No,
Yeah.
honestly, I think the issues with the school, they just have been unwilling, for whatever reason, to put their arms around this and become a partner in working through a solution.
So would denying this somehow trigger more enthusiasm on their part?
I think they're gonna have a hard sell.
I mean, I think if they put some money out of the R&D, if they kick in, 150, 200,000 out of their R&D, then I think it would, we could all
They
support.
were all partners.
Right,
We're all
right.
equal partners. I mean, if I was sitting in the audience, I would ask that question. Wait a minute. I'm missing something. There's someone missing at the table. Where are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
600,000 divided by 4 is less than by 3. Last time I looked.
Yep.
And then,
benefit their operating budget.
Right.
It's an improvement to the school in many ways. I mean, it's,
Right.
they're one of the few, I think, Jack, aren't they, one of the few left on the hockey that doesn't have an artificial field?
Yeah, it's awful. It really is. It's, you know, not only when we get on the field, it's awful, but when we, you know, the fact that we can't get on the field until weeks after the other towns are on the field. And I'm from the youth, like lacrosse program that I participated in for years. You know, we get killed by Franklin and the other towns early in the season, and then we'd hold our own late in the season because we'd catch up. But you know, they're on the fields 2 to 3 weeks ahead of us. And the turf committees, you know, worked with this principal and the athletic director about, you know, coming up with plans, and they've got a lot of data about renting out the facilities to all the youth organizations to raise money to put into a fund for the, you know, kind of the 10-year recycling plan when they have to replace the carpet. So there would be, you know, there would be benefit to the youth groups, and a lot of the you know, soccer programs and lacrosse programs, football are regional, you know, they are KP regional teams now, so they could all benefit from this. And then KP would benefit because they'd have funds to replace the carpet in probably 10 years.
So I'd be very supportive of a motion at 150.
Well, how did I thought about that too? You know, just short it down and make that totally different stuff. I
It's
agree
great.
with you.
That does force them, now they're looking
I
at,
agree with you.
they
And
come up
it
with
conveys
150 or
support.
they're out of, they don't have anything.
So I second the motion. Was that a motion?
Sounded like one.
Sound like one to me. Especially at
I think
8:30.
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
no,
If you're dying.
Threshold's lower.
You're only good for
it is an interesting approach.
Make it quick.
Yeah.
Oh, no one told me you were sick. Come on.
He's dying, are you kidding me? I just thought it was ours.
I don't think it's communicable. I'm on all kinds of antibiotics. But
Okay, yeah.
Well, I do
There
think
it is.
it's an interesting approach, Harley, because I agree, as I said at the beginning, I think it's gonna be hard to privately raise the rest of the money, so,
No, I agree.
and I think all 3 towns probably feel like a turf field, field like that, you know, it's the right thing to do in this day and age. And, you know, but it'd be nice to see, this would kinda, if the
Like
school
force
committee
them out.
wants to,
Yeah.
you know, have them pick up the
Send
difference,
messages
that
to
would,
them.
yes.
Right.
Yeah, so I like that's a great idea.
I make a motion in support of whatever the wording will be for an amount of 150,000 to be
Right.
borrowed.
Yeah,
seconded.
all right. Any, well, we can talk about it a bit, but any final discussion? We're all set, all right? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right.
Great suggestion.
Yeah, we're all good.
All
I hate
right,
to vote it down.
up to 150,000.
Something
We
that
are,
actually saves
we
money.
are
Kind of
supportive.
borrowing, right? Borrowing,
Yeah.
Jack?
Borrowing, yes.
Borrowing,
Yes. All right, let's see, Bill, I think
Great.
there's only one or
That's
two.
great. I think that's,
We good?
I've got one, and this is,
Thereby making 100.
Article 24, which is the contracts, proposes town's
yeah.
bylaws, procedures for contracts for a period greater than 1 year.
Yes.
So, maybe some quick background on this one, and what are we doing here, Jim?
I can,
We have had some issues with independent boards contracting and not abiding by what the contract calls for.
Okay.
I guess is another way to say it. We're not trying to interfere with the qualifications of the people they hire. We certainly don't want to interfere. ZBA, for example, hires people for 30 days, 60 days. This isn't the intent of this. This is just to ensure that the financial arrangements are appropriate and are adhered to. We are responsible for all of the fiscals associated with this town, and it is not an uncommon practice for the Board of Selectmen to have to sign off on contracts. And so that's what this is relating to. We just want to be sure that the contracts are financially appropriate and that they are followed. And that when there's a fee schedule associated with the contract, that fee schedule is in fact enforced. And we've had, quite frankly, several issues where that has not been the case.
Question, so this talks about special approval. How would this article address the question of adhering to the terms of the contract?
Well, we become the signatory of the contract.
Oh, so you have more, okay.
So we have, it's our relationship now that
I
we
see.
have, so we have some enforcement power in the contract.
Okay.
So just to make sure I understand the concern, there are situations in which a department official or committee has
Committee.
not
Let's
paid
leave
a
it-
It's
vendor.
committee, this is
Committee.
not a department, this is a committee.
Committee, not a department issue, just,
So a vendor has gone unpaid because a
No,
committee.
no. The specific issue is that the consultant was hired by a board,
Okay.
and there were specific fee schedules associated with that contract that were not adhered to. The consultant charged far in excess of what he was supposed to be charging, and there was no enforcement or oversight in ensuring that that was adhered to.
So bills are over.
I see.
Now,
So-
this didn't come at the expense of taxpayers, but it came at the expense of people who do business with us in the town. So it isn't an issue of who writes the check, doesn't matter. If you have a consultant that is going beyond the bounds of what our fee schedule is, that should not be allowed. And it has been, I don't want to say that it's been consciously allowed, let's just say that it hasn't been
managed well.
managed.
And it's arisen because of a multi-year nature of
It
the
is.
services?
If I could
Because I
spin
feel
it,
like your example could also apply on a very short-term basis as well.
I think there's two kind of concerns. One is that the fact that just the overall management of a long-term contract, and of course, there's probably you got the same concern with short contracts too, but at least you're in and out, and there's, you'd have to get a new contract, hopefully you wouldn't make the same mistake again. But the concern historically has been that there's been long-term contracts, and in the case that Jim was talking about is there were a lot of, there was an aggressive inspection schedule set up by the contractor, and the committee just kept paying, and it just got excessive. It wasn't illegal, it just could have been managed a lot better. The second part of the concern that I have is that it's a long-term relationship with the committee. And we have it in departments too, and we try not, and you go to the Attorney General's procurement classes, and they, it's not a law, but it's guidance they give you, is to, don't have these long-term relationships. You wanna shake it up once in a while so that, you can see best practices and you don't just get overly comfortable with a contract.
Complacency. There has been issues where we've had complacency with contracts, and that usually doesn't go well.
Yeah, he's been here forever, we trust him, it's bad business.
Okay.
So it's just one more set of eyes
Yeah.
that provide us the opportunity to provide some oversight. We're not trying to interfere in the operations of independent boards, but
At the end of the day,
we're all
someone want to be able to
volunteers.
say no.
I mean, everybody's volunteer. I mean, it's hard sometimes we're not casting shadows on folks. It's sometimes very easy. I mean, we sign the warrants all the time without going through those warrants because we trust the people that compile the data. So other boards do the same. But you need every now and then, we do audits every year to be sure that the data that's been in those warrants is accurate. When you get into relationships with consultants, that audit never takes place. So you don't know whether or not the rules are being abided by. And when we started looking at that and doing sort of modified audits, we found a lot of problems.
Have you gotten feedback from any of the major spending committees? Have they had any input one way or the other?
I've
Great idea, no
talked to
problem.
the chairman of the board. It's really only probably
Land use
two
boards.
boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's planning board and board of health, and both chairs are aware of the article. I don't know that the planning board has expressed, and quite honestly, that's where the issue was, has expressed any comment, but I have talked to Tom Gilbert, chair of the board of health, and he understands the article and doesn't have an issue.
It seems like an odd way to put this together. You want to expand the auditor, the controller oversight of contracts, right? That's
Part of
the,
it, yeah.
and then that ought to be said. This says, this doesn't describe the intent of it, and nor is it, don't you need more resources to do this?
Well, it brings the Board of Selectmen, the town, if you will, in as the signature of the contract. So it now falls under our normal.
I vote that Arlie takes this article at town meeting and you can explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll speak to it at town meeting, and I think it's something that we need to put in place.
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
don't think we should, I don't think that an independent board has the ability, time, you name it, to provide the correct level of oversight that we, as a finance department, have the ability to do.
Would adding language that expresses a desire to include the contract expertise and, not auditor, what's the word for it, procurement officer or something?
Well, Jack is the procurement officer, so he
Is that-
is the procurement officer for the town.
Is that where you're going, Arlie? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the spirit of it, I can appreciate, but the specific objective is you want to have control or oversight or audit, whatever you call it, function imposed on all contracts, right? That's what you'd be, your desired outcome.
That's the, yes, and then there's the part that was a little harder to explain that, and I'm not sure you can put into language, which is, we don't think it's in the best interest of the town. And I'll go back to the Board of Health years ago had a consultant that was here for 100 years, slight exaggeration, but a long time. And it shouldn't have been, and there were issues, but because of the relationship, it was never addressed. Fair way to say it? I mean, it should have, and so we want to see over a certain time frame, sort of a regular rebidding, if you will, and a revisiting of these contracts.
But again, I'm all supportive of the spirit and the intent. It's just that this article doesn't say that. It says
But by
that you're
being the,
responsible.
but by being the signature, we're now being, if this article passes, we would be the only authorizing signature for a contract. So if we had that situation with the Board of Health, for example, where, they just said, well, we're gonna renew it for another year, and it's been 22 years, we're going for 23rd. We could say, no, we will not sign that contract, we want you to go to bid.
Well, you're describing the mechanism, and I think if I understand you, Arlie, the article states the mechanism, not the reason why.
Correct.
So, yeah, the mechanism I think we all
But we can
understand.
verbalize the reason why.
So
I don't know that you'd want to put that in
add
the
as-
article.
Yeah, do we typically put in language? I mean, would that go in more of the recommendation versus the
The
article itself?
recommendation would state the rationale for it.
We create an audit trail so that we ensure that the financials are being applied correctly. And we provide the opportunity to ensure that we don't get too comfortable over time and could require various boards to go out to bid. We don't decide who they pick. We're not imposing ourselves in the selection process.
At the end of the day, you do. I mean,
Pardon?
well, at the end of the day,
At the end of the day, we
you're
get to say
holding
yes
that,
or no.
you're holding that veto card.
We get to say yes or no. Right, but we're not involved in the process of selection, we just get to say yes or no. So we could force a board to go to bid on a consultant where they might not choose to do so.
Yeah, it seems, again, I think I appreciate the intent and value of it, but it could be achieved without, by other means, by stating that no contracts, that there's some anti-complacency requirements and there's an audit or control or oversight function that has to be exercised for all contracts. This extends the authority of the Board of Selectmen to achieve that, right?
Correct.
But it is not necessary to extend the authority of the Board of Selectmen in order to achieve that. That could be achieved by other means which maintain the towns.
You could put an article together that says that every board must provide a year-end audit on all expenditures associated with the contract to ensure that they follow the contract. And you're required every 4 years to go out to bid for new consultants. I mean, yeah, I guess you could do that.
I mean, that would
But,
achieve.
That would be a nightmare.
Yeah. But if you did that, then you, in this case that we're talking about with the planning board, you get very different opinions. I mean, you have a board that's comfortable with a consultant, where they go through the audit and they say, well, you know what, all those inspections, they were necessary. Whereas you gotta, I think what the selectmen are trying to do is provide a outside perspective to say, you know, to at least ask the question, you know, was that process proper? By just putting the words in place that the planning board in this case has to go through a process, they're probably still gonna end up in the same result, I think. Because in my mind, it is my, you know, that they're too close to the relationship. They're not gonna see it the same way as an outside perspective does.
Which I understand, although I think Arlie's raising, I don't wanna sound dramatic, like a separation of powers question.
Well, what I don't want to do is on town floor get into a lot of laundry issues on this. I mean, I know we're on cable TV now, but it's real. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens, and we run the risk of having it continue to happen without ill intent. I'm not implying that people are intentionally doing anything wrong here. It's just that Jack is right. You get too close to it. And we have a planner in town now. And he is the one that has looked at a lot of this and helped us work through what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. And the way some of our contracts have been worded is there are opportunities for consultants to take advantage of that relationship. And if you're close to it, you know, I mean, in this particular case, 10 years, I think, that the consultant, or 10 or 12 years that the consultant was there and had established relationships with members of the board, you become complacent. You do. It's just human nature. You become comfortable. Maybe that's a better word. You become comfortable. I mean, we just want, we feel that there needs to be some oversight to this that is independent of that board. And, you know, the town says no, the town says no. We're not trying to interfere, we're trying to put some control in the process. And the Board of Health, you know, God, he was there, what, 20 years?
Long time.
Before you know, I mean, and there were issues galore that were just never addressed because of relationships. And no one had the ability to do anything about it. You know, just the board, just the 3 people on the board. And you get 2 people that say no, it's no. And at least this would put us in a position of being able to say no more. You know, you're gonna have to bid it, rebid it, and Jack is right. You could say, you could force them to change, in essence, by not agreeing to their decision.
Again, I think the intent in terms of providing, avoiding those traps that apparently some independent boards have fallen into is a very good one. I think an article focused on the practice, establishing a standard of practice for the town across the board is something that, across all contracting authorities, is something that would set a standard that the town should, and everyone in it should aspire to. This kind of goes at it from a different angle and provides that oversight. Well, basically says the selectmen step into a process that's
We have to approve the relationship. We have to approve the contract.
which it seems to me has a different tone to it, frankly.
It's our best guess at how to deal with the issue.
Right.
If you can think of a better way that gets us to the same place, but we're not, we're not trying to build a regime here. We're trying to fix a problem that we think is something that needs to be addressed.
I have a question. So if we were to pass an article which sets some specific guidelines about, or requirements as to how contracts should be done, if a board engages in a contract and doesn't do that, what would the enforcement
Well,
mechanism be?
you see, that's, I don't think we want to go there because Every contract has different requirements and different, I mean, the Board of Health has one type of contracting arrangement, Planning Board has a different type of contracting arrangement. We're not interfering with how they set their fees or how they collect their fees, and they're very different. Board of Health and Planning Board, night and day. So if you had one set standard on how it all applies, it won't work. Because you have two entirely different approaches, and both work. Both approaches are okay.
Well, but just assuming you even could have something which was applicable to both, it was kind of level, whether it's don't keep the same person for 20 years, whatever it is. I'm curious about the enforcement aspect. I mean, what would, you can put guidance in a warrant article, but what would,
And who's watching them? I mean, that's, you know, the problem is that, from what my experience has been, that an independent board may have, with all the good intentions, they're volunteers.
Right.
And nobody's really paying that much attention to what goes on. They've brought issues to the plate, and they deal with them, and they vote on them, and that's that, and then they just move on. And so there's no real control or oversight on contracts that can be long-term. And I think that realistically, the only way that that's gonna work is if you do, I think, to Jim's point, this is a good way to allow them to have some oversight without imposing their will. Yeah, could they? I suppose they could, but they are an elected board, and if they started trying to take over the planning board's responsibilities, they're gonna feel the heat, so.
I mean, I relate to Harley's point about it, it does feel awfully broad, I just don't know how the enforcement works without it being that broad.
If it, practically speaking, you can describe policies, but can't enforce them, that doesn't seem like a very compelling cap. But the consequence of this article is you're suddenly going to get a lot of 11-month contracts, right? I mean, that's how, if there's a board that feels there's a vital relationship, then.
And they were circumvent the intent of this, then yeah.
But they can't renew it. You couldn't renew it past
Sure,
that.
they could do 6-month contracts forever. Not be in violation.
Well, no, this says
No,
an
you
existing
can't-
contract for a
right, you
total or
can't do
combined
that.
period of greater than 1 year. You have language for that.
Yeah,
With combined period. With
Yeah.
combined
right,
Yeah.
combined
Yeah, we
period.
thought about that.
If I do 12 one-month contracts, surprise.
No, that's true.
Right.
Do the math.
How many relationships do we think the town has with people that
not a
are
lot.
multi-year?
And I think it's just these two boards.
It's really.
Well, no,
only two.
there's the
Well, if you
auditors,
include
there's
the
town
departments,
council, there's.
Yeah, but that's not through committees, right? That's through.
Well, but
Sure,
it
says town
applies,
departments.
but my comment earlier was that it hasn't been
You're
a
right.
problem with the other ones, but yeah, so we have
Departments don't
auditors.
sign contracts, they either the board or you
Yeah.
sign. in the
Yeah,
board's
they
behalf.
already signed them, so it's not.
Yeah.
So would this change?
No, I'm
or
just
is
trying to figure out how many are we saying?
Two boards.
Oh, it's
Basically,
more
it's
just
Board
on
of Health
the,
and Planning Board, the only two boards that really.
wouldn't this also apply to schools?
No,
What's the out for the school committee?
I'm not reading the article, but
Oh, it just
we did
says
not want to.
town departments, town officials,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
town
it doesn't-
committees.
The intent of the word town was not to include schools.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're not.
No, I understand.
governing boards for schools. We're not gonna- we have
Municipal.
no right to interfere.
If we,
with
maybe we should
whatever
change those 3 words to municipal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
municipal. We don't want to, this does not apply to schools. There was no intent to have this apply to schools.
Okay. And it could be, because you're using capital letters, which I assume are defined terms in the general bylaws, town departments, town officials, town committees, because you don't use the word board, so I assume
Right.
that's not exempting boards.
We
But,
do not want to intrude in any of the schools. That's not-
So
we have no right to
potentially,
schools.
schools aren't part of the definition of town departments, town officials, or town committees. I
That's
don't
what
know.
thought.
Yeah.
If we need to be more clear on that, we can.
Yeah, that's
If you use the word municipal, it would,
useful,
And
and
it's
say
covering just-
boards, if that was. if that
Jack's
was-
purview,
Yeah,
basically.
we had a problem. I mean,
Right.
we've had problems.
Yeah.
And we've had difficulty in getting folks to pay attention to the problems.
So it's not inconceivable that the schools have had problems as well. If these are problems, then
I would think the school, we have contracts, as Jack said, within the town, but there's an oversight process in place for those contracts. I would assume that the school has the same process in place. when you're dealing with independent board, you basically, you show up for a meeting, you know, and someone puts down 12 vouchers in front of you, and you sit there and you sign them, you pass them around the room. I mean, that's what happens. And so you don't have any idea. You trust that what's behind that piece of paper is following what it's supposed to follow. And to Jack's point, you know, that if the norm is 6 inspections, and I'm making numbers up, and the charge is for 40 inspections, you don't even see it. You don't know it. You see a number. And so it's not that they're not paying attention, it's that the process doesn't really give them the opportunity to pay attention. Any more than my signing the warrant for the town. I don't go through those pages. I trust the finance department. And I know at the end of the year that that's audited.
He's on the line.
Well, but it's yeah, well, he's on the line, I mean, everybody's on the line.
Everybody is, yeah.
And you know, I use the analogy that if after a year, we find out that the employee, that the finance department, you know, kind of likes this person, is adding 10 hours of pay every week to their, you know, part-time pay schedule, which we'd never see on a weekly basis, but when the audit comes through at the end of the year, we find this out, what would you do? Well, you'd fire the employee. No-brainer. You'd fire the employee. To me, it's the same thing. If you have a consultant that is knowingly doing more than they need to do because it's revenue, that's not right. You know, and there's no process in place on the independent board side to check that.
And the frustrating part was that with the planner getting in place and identifying some of these problems, again, as Jim said, they're not taxpayer money, but they're developers' funds. Planner identified that there was a problem, and the independent committee kind of poo-pooed it. You know,
Didn't see it the same way.
yeah. Some of the members, not all.
Not all of them, but
Definitely
you'd
not
think
all.
they'd stand up and say, wow, and that wasn't the case. And we can't force anything. There's nothing we can do.
Well,
Because we can't cut their budget because it's not a budget item.
I move that we approve Article 24 with the
Nice job, Rob.
substitution of the word municipal for town.
Second.
No,
Waiting for you, buddy.
Yeah, further discussion, or that all,
Harley, thoughts? Or?
No, I think that the rationale for this needs to be carefully explained, as Rick stepped up and volunteered to do earlier, as I recall.
I volunteered to write it and bring it to town meeting. Perfect. So this is my,
Thank you.
Good luck.
all right.
thank you.
All set? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
And this is an Arthur article.
All right. All right, so now, I think we've gone through all the articles. We still have a few we have to vote.
Are we done with our
We good to
guests?
go?
Yeah, you guys are
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
free.
Feel better.
We're just going
Thank you.
to,
Hopefully nothing's
Get
been.
through your tax
we're gonna vote the rest of
We can
these.
try to get far away.
Yes.
Final.
Bio bubble here.
Thanks, Katie.
Okay.
That is.
All right. All right, so Article 2, Jack doesn't think we have any unpaid bills. We'll take a motion on this one.
Move to IP.
All right.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Article 3, we will do, we'll vote on that one right before town meeting. That's the transfers. I'm sure we will have some. Article 4 is the compensation schedule.
Vote to approve.
All right.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Article 5 is the budget. So we've chatted for a while. I don't know if we have any final thoughts or further discussion we'd like to have on this. Otherwise, I'll.
Make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
guys, this is we just,
You're having a hard
I
time.
think
with
we're
this
right for the discussion, Dave.
we just,
That's fine.
I have issues too, as well, but I have, Jack thinks he can make this work, so.
We think the assumptions are overly generous.
I don't think it's the assumptions, right, Early? It's the how you got there, right?
It's a lot of free cash used for, operating.
yeah, exactly, and we just come off a period, there was a period of extreme stress, which I could understand, where we even took down $100,000 from the stabilization, and then I think we put $100,000 back, very fast, but, there was a big, that was a statement thing to the school, and now, it just seems like there's $500,000, and we just talked about adding $150,000 borrowing, which is going to be a long-term additional expense for good cause, of course, just like everything else is on the budget.
Right.
I don't. My hunch is that they probably under budgeted new growth, and that's why they're comfortable with it. So that would be you could either say it looks. It's the same process you went through, Dave. Well, it doesn't look like too large a number at $33 million worth of spending, but it's kind of our job to flag those differences.
Right. Well, mine was more, I think you could get there another way, but I always come back to, at the end of the year, the pluses and minuses all roll into free cash. And I think over the course of the last few years, the town has always done a good job of managing such that a couple $100,000 doesn't get spent. My gut is there's a little contingencies in a few budgets.
Right.
You look at some of the detail, there's a few items are up a little bit, but not dramatically, and most likely, to your point, Arlie, if new growth or some of the other revenue items come in a little higher, most likely the budget will get spent. If the revenue's looking really tight or is right on the mark, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the usual, we save a little bit at the end such that there's some free cash rolling over again. So that was more how I came down, as opposed to, I think if push came to shove and you didn't want to use $350 of free cash, you could get it down to $150 or $200, which would be in the. But I think we'll end up in the same place at the end of next year. Slightly, to your point though, a little concerned that a little bigger hole we're gonna have to fill up next year. So it could be a little more of a challenge in FY17.
We did, I think, I heard that Jack wanted to add a little bit of money to the dispatch, but perhaps, isn't that what he kind of took a note to? And we also lost 140 on the snow and ice.
Right.
You would only be using dispatch for part of the year, it wouldn't be a
Right.
whole year.
Right.
And they would be collecting rent on.
Yeah, I think initially
Part of the year
he
as
was
well.
going down the path, maybe I'll find the 14. And then I think he was thinking the offset from rent, now we're in really a small number. So I think he was gonna leave it.
So, the information that we have today is that what was $164,000 gap became roughly $300,000 gap. That what appears to be 350, and the debt thing, I just don't understand, is actually 500. Those seem like fairly large bits of information, which you'd like to know how you're going to solve the 140 over here without making the 150 over here worse, I guess. I don't quite see, I don't have a high degree of comfort over the totality of the numbers here. But I'm sure they will manage to close it, so if the idea is to get a budget out from
Yeah, and I'll come back in the end, because potentially, I don't know if we may need to have one more meeting depending if some of this other stuff, like, I think his intention right now is to go with this as it is, and, to your point, working on some solutions relative to the snow and ice deficit.
Yeah, he said, he indicated that he had some. of
Right,
those, so-
right. So, but, you know, we might be on call for a little discussion if something changes in the next few weeks. But barring something, I think, out of the norm, I think this, you know, it's a budget that they think we can live with and continue on with, notwithstanding some of the slight uneasiness I think it causes us a little bit.
So if one of those events occurs, do we move to reconsider the day out, or should we just postpone voting?
No, right now, I think that's the budget, this is the budget we're gonna see in, whatever the West Town meeting, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. He's not planning to change it at this point.
Okay.
All right, well, we had a
Motion.
motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, all right. Article 6, which is the Water Division, which Bob went over with us a couple of weeks ago. It's the back of Jack's package, a couple pages near, like, the second or third from the end. Basically, a quick summary was, I think, from Bob, I mean, it's only a 22,000 increase, and, which is like, I don't know, 1.5%. The water rates are staying the same for next year. There weren't too many unusual changes in either direction.
Motion approved.
Seconded.
All right. Any further discussion on the Water Division? I think the only interesting thing in it is, he kind of has his own reserve for unforeseen expenses, which I think effectively, yeah, obviously, if they have some unexpected
break or
expense,
something
yes.
like that, you know.
Other than that, that falls into their equivalent of, you know, they don't call theirs free cash, it's the equivalent of KPs, it's
I
like
think it's
E&D.
because of the potential
Yeah.
for breaks, that it
That
could be.
they keep it,
that
yes.
could be a huge
Yes.
hit.
And, so,
Do they have any capital? Haven't we done
So,
drilling any wells
the big-
or anything like that?
Bob we did ask him about that. I think he's at least a year or so away, but he does have, at some point we need another well.
The process.
And it's a significant, like, I thought he said $1 to $2 million for a new well, which would be, you know, debt funded over
Right.
some time period. But I don't believe so, not in this
Those
coming year.
that have water will actually have to pay for it.
Yes. All right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor for the water department?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, unanimous. All right, Article 7, we will wait. Like, even though he says it's similar to what we talked about when we put it in place, you know, it's roughly 110,000, but let's wait till we see the detail on that one. Article 8 is the capital items we reviewed.
Eight is the free cash.
The free cash ones. Article 8 is the free cash items.
Make a motion of.
Total 288,907.
Move to approve 289,907, is that what we said?
288,907.
288,907
Seconded.
for the items listed in 2 through 8.
All right. Any final discussion now? I think we're all up on these items. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Article 9 is the ambulance.
amount that we're approving is
I bel-
Yeah,
It would be the 235,
Right.
right, because we'd have to approve the whole amount that we're funding.
So I move to approve 235,000 and borrow it.
Seconded.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, unanimous. Article 10 is, not expecting anything to be in this category. So,
Move to IP.
all right.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions. All right. Article 13 is the revolving funds.
No changes in the
No
limits.
changes from last year, no changes in the limits.
Move to recommend approval of Article 13.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Objections, abstentions, none, unanimous. On to Article, we're up to Article, we are up to Article 26.
17, or?
We did
26.
17,
Oh,
that was yours.
We voted on it, yeah.
Yes.
Yep,
So, this is the,
Oh,
26.
good lord. This
Why are
is-
we
26.
doing with this?
I don't
this
know what
is-
we, so we're not, you know, as Jay has told me, you know, he'll have the petitioner will make the motion on this
Right.
one. I don't know.
We still have to vote on it. don't
We could take no position.
Well, is that, did Jay say that's a possibility, or is it, or do we have to do IP or approve?
Well, you know what, I did not, because we're not making the
I
motion,
mean,
I think from a, so we're not going to, unless we want to amend the floor motion, which.
right, no,
That we will. So it's really, do we want to put in any recommendation in the warrant?
we? I'd rather not.
I'd rather not.
Yeah,
No,
I-
it really is.
Yeah,
If I had to vote on it, I would IP it because
right.
it is just a,
It's,
A
it
gesture.
right,
doesn't
it's
mean
not a,
anything, really.
right. Yeah, I think we'll just write,
That might be worth explaining, and you're not
Yes.
taking a position on it.
Because it
it
has-
has impact.
yeah, it's an advisory, article, I don't know what it really is.
We could just say that this is being submitted and will be commented on by the petitioner.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's what it should be, because
Yeah,
they're the petitioners.
yeah, I think, you know, I think that's, this was submitted by petition.
We'll
The
address the
advisory
article at town
committee
meeting.
doesn't
They can
take a
make their
position on it,
presentation
and the
and-
petitioner,
Yeah,
petitioner will explain, yes. All right, I'll leave that one. And then the last one, which is not currently numbered, is page 12.
Oh, that's the G.
It's the, this was the one Ray was in last week talking about. There was some consensus, this may come off the warrant. There was some discussion last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting on potentially, depending on how the planning board sees this one, that I think some people have expressed some concerns in, it just needs a little more, there's portions of it that might not be quite as well fleshed out as they need to be.
Was planning meeting tonight on this?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So.
wasn't comfortable with doing anything until we heard from them anyway.
Right,
Right.
right. So if it stays, I think we can discuss it right before town meeting, and so we'll leave it there. And we'll just see where it comes, if it's still on there when we get to town meeting. So that is, we've made it through the warrant. All right, last one is we need to assign who's doing the articles.
Well, there are a lot of people not here.
Yes, so we will,
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Lisa, Jonathan?
all right, let's see. Just, are there anyone, so I know, Arthur, you were gonna take, Article
24.
24.
In which case,
maybe just to finish off,
yeah, just do the contiguous ones there.
24, 25.
23. A lot of this stuff's procedural.
Why don't you just start at 24 and go to the end? I think there's like 3. So it's
24.
24, 25, 26, you don't have to. And then, do you want to do the zoning? So then the
Sure.
last 3 are the zoning. If you,
That's fine.
Alright.
No, we haven't voted on that, have we?
No.
We did.
Oh,
We
we
voted
voted.
to, Article 27. I'm
IP,
sorry,
right?
you were out of town, last week. So we voted to IP Article 27, mostly similar to our position last year, which is we'd prefer to see zoning articles go through the town process.
So the
The
zoning committee hasn't
Right,
had
no,
a chance to.
no.
I will write that up.
And then Article 28 was we re-voted tonight. And then the last one, we'll see if that one stays or not.
Okay, so I'll do 20.
So 24 to 27,
24, 25, 27, and 28.
yes,
So I'll do the last 4.
yes,
Okay.
do the last 4. I will do, I'll do 2 through 5, I'll go through up through the budget. And then we've got the, water department, sewer fund, and then the capital. And,
You take,
if I could also get those, Pat,
yeah,
you let Pat do those.
yeah.
Usually likes to. So we'll have Pat do 6, 7, 8,
10.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we've got 12. We don't need one for 11, so 12 on.
Some of these more boilerplate
Yeah.
in the past set aside for the
Yeah.
newer members.
Have a-
Jonathan?
Yeah, Jonathan, we'll get in 12 through, there's not that many articles this year, so actually
Yeah.
we may have to, if people are interested. We can give Jonathan 12 through 16. All right,
Boy, that's suddenly got a heavy load. Was he the only?
no, who's this year? Lisa's been on 2. Then we've got Article 17 is the turf committee article.
Mm.
Whatever, you wanna jump on that one? You're the one that made the motion, right?
Yeah,
Was it
I'm
you or
happy
Arthur
to-
that jumped
I
on the
made the motion, but
150, which is a very good.
Harley, this, and potentially, either you or Pat, you could talk to him just to see, he might have a little more background on it, but,
And will you talk to the school committee?
yes, yep. So then we've got the 2 KP articles, 18, 19, and then we've got the CPC articles.
What was that, 18 and 19, from 17 to 19?
You wanna do that? Alright,
I'll do CPC.
you wanna do CPC, Rick? Alright. Which is 20 through 22? 23, sorry.
2, 3.
Alright.
And Lisa didn't get any,
Lisa didn't get
so
any.
she can,
Well,
if you want to split, maybe some of Jonathan's.
yeah,
So he's
Yeah.
not doing, because he's doing quite a few.
yeah, I'll probably, we'll have him do 11 to 13, I'll have Lisa do 12, 13, 14, and I'll at least do 15, 16. All right. Okay. And I'll check if there was any in particular that somebody was passionate about. I'll shoot it around, but otherwise, I'll let everyone know who couldn't make it tonight what articles they're doing.
Okay.
I think I need the recommendations back by next Monday. Is that possible?
Do you know who was on the turf committee?
I think Jack knows, but
No, I don't know everyone's name, so I'm not sure. I know, as Jack said, the principal and athletic director on it, but I know there's a,
Pat also has.
and Pat note, yes.
So by the 23rd, you want these?
the 20th?
Yes, the 20th,
That's Monday.
Monday the 20th?
What am I looking at? Oh, I think Monday, I thought you said Thursday. 20th.
Okay.
It's freezing in here.
It is,
Yeah, I know.
it is about 40 degrees in here.
Set the
All
thermostat
right.
to tundra.
That was a,
I make a motion that
All
the
right.
that the room gets warmer.
yeah.
Do I have a second?
So, typically, the last thing I have is, typically we meet right before town meeting, which is fine, we can stick with that.
That's which
I don't
date?
know, well, the only other one would be, I always feel like a rush to get whatever last minute would be to meet,
May 12th is the
12th.
yeah, like Monday the 11th. Just knock out everything, but then that might, I don't know. So I was debating whether, let's just stick with we'll meet an hour before the meeting.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that works
So we'll
pretty
meet
well.
at
Yeah.
6 then?
Yeah,
We can always
so-
call it if things look contentious.
Yeah.
You feel like there's more time.
Then we can always do something, right? So, all right, so let's tentatively, we'll plan for 6 o'clock, I think the meeting's at 7, so 6 o'clock on the 12th,
12th. Okay.
Yep.
and that'll be our next meeting.
Sounds good.
I'll shoot around the minutes prior
Do you
to
think it's
that.
gonna be, how many nights for the town meeting? I currently am scheduled to leave on the 15th.
Ah, all right. I think it's gonna be one night. I can't
Yeah,
imagine better, it's just,
Well, I mean, that petitioner's article on the school thing, that,
Yeah.
that alone could take, I mean, I don't know what their plans are, but they could,
Yeah,
they
so
could
it's,
spend some
yes.
time on that.
yeah,
And if the zoning, if they keep the zoning on, that's gonna take a long
yeah,
time.
oh, that one will, yeah. So I think you're right. But I think, Arlie, we'll get past your articles. I'll be surprised if we don't get past your articles on the first night. But just in case, we'll have a backup.
Well, we could always make a motion to move articles too,
Yeah,
in the way they're presented.
Order of consideration here.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think we'll definitely get, Arlie, I think in the first night, we'll definitely get through yours.
I mean, I'll write them up, so
Alright.
you'll
Monday.
have something to comment.
All right, all right. I think that's
Motion
it.
adjourned?
Motion
Seconded.
to adjourn, second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're all set.